And to culture wars. Look, I am so struck by how news that doesn't fit the media agenda gets ignored or then turned on its head. Now, the agenda I'm talking about here is Donald Trump is a racist, and so obviously must be his supporters. So if Trump supporters attack Jews, that would be big news, wouldn't it? You'd hear about it non-stop. But if left-wingers, Joe Biden supporters, if they attack Jews, well, I bet you haven't even heard of the mob in New York last weekend that attacked a Jews for Donald Trump rally. They threw eggs at the cars. They threw rocks at the cars as well. They punched the cars. These people have a problem with cars. And they kicked them and threw red paint all over them. And a Jewish man who got out was punched in the back of the head by one of the cowards. Yet, this is how Channel 9 summed it up. Jews for Trump rally in New York erupts in violence. Like, might have just been the Jews that caused that, you know? Joining me is Rowan Dean, columnist, editor of The Spectator Australia, and host of Outsiders on Sky News on Sundays at 9 a.m. Rowan Dean, there is now racism in the left. There is an anti-Semitism in the left. There's also a very strong streak of violence, and yet I just see many in the media not facing up to any of this.
Yeah, for my sins, Andrew, and I try not to make a habit of this, but as I was driving in, just so that the rest of the nation does not have to, I listened to the ABC on the radio, and they were playing the classic game as well of saying, oh, there's violence on the right and there's violence on the left, and the violence on the right is racist, redneck, right-wing violence, and the violence on the left is really just people who don't like racists, rednecks, and so on. So there's this extraordinary ability of the left to turn a blind eye to the disgusting and sickening violence on their own side. So the only thing you can ever do in these circumstances, Andrew, is to immediately just flip the roles, as you just did, for example. If it were Trump supporters attacking Jews in New York or anywhere else, what would you think? But let's go one further and say, what if it were in London or Sydney or Melbourne or New York? What if it were a group of, say, young white men throwing stones, bottles, smashing a Muslim convoy, if there was a Muslim demonstration for whatever, and you had a group of non-Muslim people attacking it? This would be headlines around the world. Australia or whatever town or country would be censured at the United Nations. That whole town or country would be labelled the most extreme racists, and you wouldn't hear the end of it. And it would provoke terrorist attacks. The mayor would apologise? Exactly. The mayor would apologise?
Yep.
So here we have people who are, almost certainly there will have been in that convoy the grandchildren or great-grandchildren of people whose houses were smashed on, or businesses were smashed on Kristallnacht in Germany by Nazi thugs in brown shirts, and there will have been the grandchildren of people who died in the Holocaust, obviously. Their grandchildren who've survived now living in New York. And yet they have to put up with bottles being thrown at them, being punched, being smashed, and the world is silence. It is absolutely despicable, Andrew, and the double standard of the left, I'm so completely fed up with this double standard where the left always try and say, oh, well, there's this moral equivalence, that these on the left are no different to those on the right. What is happening in the left wing of politics, and particularly in the States, but in the Western world, is sickening.
So many in the media dreamed, when I get in the media, and I had that dream too, I'm going to fight fascism. Never again, will it creep up unannounced like it did in the 1930s. I'll be there. Here's fascism standing right in front of them, except, of course, it comes from the left, which fascism actually does tend to do. It comes from the left, and they don't see it. They don't want to even recognise it. Faults on both sides. They're both as bad as each other. It's just rubbish. Here is a civilisational threat. This is what they wanted to get in journalism for. Deal with it. Now, related to this is one of the issues that the moderators of the presidential debates ignored. They want to talk about global warming. They want to talk about, is Trump a racist? Kept coming back, same old questions. What they ignored was one of the great achievements of Donald Trump. He has helped to broker, and this is historic, I reckon this is historic, he has helped to broker peace deals between Israel and 3 of its traditional Muslim enemies so far, or at least fierce critics, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Sudan. Now, why is the media not giving Trump credit?
Yeah, and again, the double standards are just repulsive. We have, you know, anyone of a similar age to you or I, Andrew, knows that their entire lifetime, the great quest, the great challenge was to get peace between the Arabs and the Israelis, or the Arabs and the Jews. This was the great quest, and many people have died in this quest, going back. Anwar Sadat, the great Egyptian leader, murdered for daring to strike a peace deal. You had Yitzhak Rabin, I'm pretty certain was died in that cause, but certainly many people have died in the cause of trying to get peace between Arabs and Jews. And all along, the left have blamed Israel and said, oh, it's their fault, and blamed America, and every attempt that has been made by the Americans to do this has fallen over for the simple reason every single time the Palestinians, who are unfortunately for the Palestinian people, the Palestinian politics is in the grasp of some very unpleasant, nasty crowd on both sides, Hamas and the Palestinian Fatah. And they have always turned down any peace whatsoever at every opportunity. No. They want the annihilation of Israel. And I was in Ramallah, Andrew, with some journalists, and we spoke at the headquarters of the Palestinian Authority, who told us uncategorically, unequivocally, that the goal of the Palestinian Authority was no Jews throughout Palestine, no Jews throughout Israel, or maybe just a handful. So this is what Israel has had to deal with. Trump has come along and he's actually managed to do the unthinkable. He's made peace between the Israelis and the Arabs by bypassing, Andrew, the Palestinians. And that was the genius of Donald Trump, and it has opened up all sorts of opportunities. And already many other Arab nations are sitting there going, this is fantastic. We can have peace with Israel, we can have trade with Israel, we can have tourism with Israel. It opens up a whole world of possibilities on both sides. And that is the genius of Donald Trump.
Yeah, and this is, let me just show viewers exactly how historic it is. It's so historic that Barack Obama's Secretary of State and presidential candidate himself, John Kerry, said it was impossible to make deals like this back when he was Secretary of State. It was impossible to make deals with Arab nations without first making peace with the Palestinians, who, as you say, of course, do not want peace. Here he is.
There will be no separate peace between Israel and the Arab world. I want to make that very clear to all of you. There will be no advance and separate peace with the Arab world without the Palestinian process and Palestinian peace.
So damn sure of himself. So sure of himself.
And this is the
Donald
Democrats.
Trump went and did it. No credit. Media doesn't want to know. Not mentioned in the debates. It's as if, well, if Donald Trump did it, it can't be any good. It must be easy, or it must be a fluke, or whatever.
And this is John Kerry, who was Barack Obama's special envoy. He was the great hope of the white side, as well as a presidential candidate before that. But he was the great hope that he was going to bring this peace, and he would resolve it via the Palestinian question. Donald Trump completely went the other way around. And what's fascinating, it's the same Barack Obama who, in a very, very similar vein, Andrew, said, well, how is Donald Trump going to magically create trade deals and jobs? How is he going to do it? The Democrats have no solutions for the problems in the world. The left have no solutions for the problems in the world. You need people like Donald Trump who cut through all the sort of red tape and get to the bottom of the nub of the problem and solve it. And that's what Trump is great at doing.
Unlike those professional bureaucratic foreign affairs guys, not process, excuse me, he wanted outcomes.
Exactly.
No, you're right. He was Barack Obama's envoy, not Secretary of State in that thing. Sorry, that was Hillary Clinton. How can I forget?